I have a lot to talk about, and I don't know how much time I will have because I arrived early to attend the meeting to see if I get into the business class that I want to get into, and I hope it goes well because I really am in a slow state of mind for sure. My brain feels like it's slowed down a lot. And I can see the mechanism at play in that. I can see how there was this expansion into creative energy. And then there was this time where it felt like everything was me. I felt like I am the world and the world is me. And then that gets translated into some kind of grandiosity at some point, which is egoic, which then is very painful, and it's a contraction that brings the ego operating system back online. So I was feeling quite disorientated for days. I could really see the mechanisms at play in my interactions with people and how I was in this higher state of consciousness, but the grandiosity thing, and I didn't feel grandiose, but it's this feeling so expansive, like I am everything. Not I, the ego. But when that happens, this I am everything and all is and wonderfulness is not a functional thing. So in order for that to dissipate and become functional in terms of ego structures again, it switches to this sort of grandiosity and reactiveness, and that's where the creative energy of not being a self, an ego, translates back into being a self. And I think I navigated it pretty well. There was drama, but I feel like I almost watched this ego structure of mine create this drama as part of the coming back to the ego functionality mechanism. So it can create a lot of drama and yelling and anger, which didn't happen. And that would be seen as, oh my gosh, she's having a mood. But I was able to communicate things, and there was some drama, but just sort of regular charged drama, which usually I don't really have any of that. But to walk back to my ego and experience a bit of drama with family and stuff wasn't that bad. And it almost felt good at one point, like, whew, okay, I'm feeling like myself. I'm feeling separate again. I'm feeling like I can function. Whereas days before I was feeling one, and then that translated into feeling like a homeless person, like not myself. So the creative energy is not myself. It's not the ego. So then when that switches in order to bring oneself back to the ego functioning, that's the switch of so-called dissociation, where I didn't feel like myself. And then if one tells people that, and I'm not saying don't say, but if I'm saying I'm feeling dissociated, I'm feeling afraid, I don't feel like myself, well then I'll get walked to the psych ward. But I was able to talk myself through that and also be with a lot of those energies, and they're friggin' painful as hell. And I don't think it's over, per se, but I'm at least feeling like my separate self again. I'm not feeling like not myself, a homeless person. I'm not feeling like a super reactive self. There's still those dramas, but I feel like I am going to speak English in the level of English of the situation and context I'm in. So I talk about speaking Gaia log and Gaia vlog and all that stuff, but there's no place for that when I'm around my family of origin. It feels like being in this familial pattern and playing out those scenes and dramas. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just something of a different space. Obviously, I'm going to have different actions, reactions, say different things to people I know, like family, than to a hummingbird in California. So to think that I should be operating like I was in California, in a different environment and consciousness and different beings around, people who think they know me around versus strangers, it's a lot easier to be this expansive, non-creative self around strangers because they don't have ideas about how you should be. So I'm seeing how the family structure does create some of this reactivity. And since one has had a taste of no self-creativity, there's more reactivity because we have a sense of how things could be. And other people don't see it that way. And it's not really a fault of theirs. It's how their brains are structured. And even in saying that right now feels really good because for a while I was feeling like they were me too. And that is not a fun way to operate at all. But then at the same time, I still feel like some of these energies I'm feeling, I'm literally feeling the stress of the people around me. My allostatic load of stress builds up really quickly, and it's making me feel really heavy and hard to move and hard to function. So I'm feeling like I'm feeling those others. So for a while I was feeling like I was them, identified with them, and like I could almost predict what they were going to come and say to me, and I could feel them walking towards me even if they were in the other room. And then now it feels separate, but I feel like that drama was needed in order to bring me back to that sense, because when somebody was speaking with me and saying like rah rah rah, kind of angry, and I didn't take it in a personal type way, it almost felt like, oh good, as this person's saying these things, I'm feeling more and more separate, like a me. I don't feel like I need to defend myself, but I don't feel like this person. It was good, and I was seeing that there's something to do with communication. It's so big. So other days there was times when I felt so disconnected, like I wanted to escape, and then I managed to communicate something, and maybe there was a bit of drama. And it's not real drama, it's just communicating with whoever that one knows and they know you and things. And I almost felt better afterwards, even though there was a bit of drama. It felt like, okay, I communicated something. So I'm seeing how important communication is, and I'm going to forget and have to remember this again for sure. And I'm feeling stress around people because I don't trust myself not to blurt out something drama-ish. And I almost had a sense of how I used to be years ago when I was living with my family before, and kind of snappy and reactive, and I'm like, whoa. And then sort of afraid of my dad sometimes. And I feel kind of afraid of him right now because I'm going to say something dumb around him and not even be able to stop it. It just comes out. It's the level of communication, and I don't know. But it's good, actually. I'm really learning to be around them, and I'm glad that now they're feeling more like separate thems than they did for a while. It is like this wave of expansion into everythingness, and then the being realizing that that's not how everyone is functioning. If everyone were functioning in that way, it'd be a completely different world and interaction and communication. We don't even know what that would look like. But since it seems like I expand, I don't really know. Something expands in perception until one feels like one is everything and everyone. But that doesn't work in the way society's structured right now. So when that flips, then I feel like I'm not myself. I didn't feel like myself. I felt like everyone. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm not myself. I'm a homeless person. And then it's like, okay, no, I'm everybody. But all this drama is what I am. And then one realizes one is the moment. And I've talked about this before, what is in front of oneself is what one will create with. So I'm with my family, so it's going to create family dynamics and drama. And I'm trying to navigate it such that it doesn't turn into a manifestation of, oh, she has her mental illness symptoms acting out. So I need to really be aware every moment and communicate. And apologize if I kind of blurt something out. And it's not bad stuff. It's just I could have done that better. And then that creates more of the ego reflecting on itself, which creates more ego. So it's an interesting mechanism to bring oneself back. It's almost learning how to be that ego center functionality again when one spent some time in creative no selfhood or non-selfhood. And I don't know, I'm working this out day by day. It seems like now I have some space to reflect on it, whereas before the reflection would change each moment. So I didn't even have time to talk about it. I could only speak as that, and it changed moment to moment, and it was really tough. Like each moment felt so different. Like I could feel like somebody else or myself or the past or all the moments now, and it was so confusing and hard to navigate. And I feel like the worst of it is over, perhaps. I feel back in my body somewhat, and maybe not, because last night I had a really terrible dream. I was trying to fall asleep. I felt like I was being grabbed and held by someone, and I could feel myself like biting their fingers, and then I kept biting and struggling, and then eventually I bit them on the hand, like right here. And then this is kind of graphic. It split open and was like bleeding into my mouth, and I was like, like stop this, what the hell? And it was so scary, and it felt real, and I was like half asleep. But I got up and I remembered to take some vitamin C, some lipospheric vitamin C, and then I put my chest strap on and I started up the Cardio Mood app, which just keeps track of my heart rate, and went to sleep. So I remember when I had the terrible hospital experience in April 2016, I would be trying to fall asleep, and then I would feel like I was being assaulted every night for a couple days. And it was awful. And then I had this experience where felt like I was asleep, and then I was sleeping on my stomach, and I woke up and I felt like I had my throat cut and I was bleeding out from the neck. And I was waiting to bleed out and die before I could get up. I couldn't even move. I couldn't get up. And I felt like people were watching me die. And I don't know if that's past life stuff or what the hell, but there's a lot of awful stuff. And then at the same time, somebody out there is experiencing something like that at that moment in this violent world. So we're not separate. So that's the non-separation too. It doesn't just yield, oh, wonderful awe forever, necessarily. It also makes us feel all the shit that's going on in the world, whether it's in a semi-dream state or awake and body pains. We are all feeling this stuff, but we don't know it. And it's translated not only into medical mental health problems, but also physical problems. We don't understand how this all works. We don't understand that a person over here can't lose weight because a person across the world is in trouble or something. Like, it's really messed how it works. And I could see some of that working in an operation, and it's so interesting and complex and mind-boggling. Like, the mind can't grasp how we're all interconnected, and it's sort of like this butterfly effect and this resonance. And so for a while I felt like I could sense that moment to moment. We don't want to know how that works moment to moment, and it does change moment to moment. There is no real causality, but there can be some intimations of some kind of weird causality that is mind-boggling and very troublesome. And if we understood it, we would change our behavior because we would see what we're doing. So it's a state of walking around lost, seeing the consequences of one's actions every moment, and not even knowing which are one's actions and who is the actor and who's the doer. It's strange. So I'm glad to not have that right now. That to me is sort of what so-called psychosis is, and I don't know if I walked through most of it without having to medicate myself. Because usually that lasts for like 3 days and I end up in the hospital. But maybe if it lasts for 3 days and then I'm usually in the hospital for a week, if I can walk through it for 10 days and not medicate myself or not go to the hospital, maybe it's over anyway. It's hard to say. Because as much as all that scary stuff was there was some magic. I was having Thanksgiving dinner with my family, and at first I was feeling kind of like all of them, and after a while I settled into feeling like my role as me, ego, self. And then I wrote on a little card that was part of the table setting. It said, "What am I thankful for?" So I wrote down my family, this food, Mr. Sun, and hummingbirds. And then I walked to the window, and it was kind of late, like it was almost getting dark. It was getting dark, and it was cloudy. And I walked to the window, looked out, and a hummingbird came up and hovered right in front of the window and looked at me. And then he went to the little feeder, drank a bit, and then sat on top of the feeder and looked at me. And probably sat there for over 30 seconds. And then had a little bit more of the feeder, sat on top, looked at me again. And I just spent this time with this hummingbird. And I'd just written down, I'm grateful for hummingbirds. So symbolically, it seems like the joy is looking for me. I'm still looking for that joy, or the joy is looking for me, because hummingbirds are symbolic of joy. And I went to an open house for sale with some people just to look, to go along to see. And when I went in the door and then I looked out the window, towards the window, there was a hummingbird there too. And they're kind of hard to spot here. They're not everywhere, and it's getting colder. So yeah, the joy is there, the magic. Feeling lost at the beginning of dinner time, and an hour or so later saying I'm grateful for hummingbirds, and then there's one looking right at me out on the other side of the window. So the magic is there with the tragic. It's hailing. And speaking of magic, driving to this meeting today, I saw 2 formations of birds flying together and changing direction altogether and changing shape, and it was just so beautiful. Awe-inspiring. And it's interesting how this works, because even though things have been really hard, all of a sudden I can sing probably 10 to 20% better. So even though this could be something like a so-called depression-ish, even though I don't feel depressed, I don't think I feel depressed because I'm really trying and giving my energy to learning every moment, and not giving up on learning from my reactions. And usually I'm not reactive, but it seems like I am, and I'm, instead of trying to pretend that's not happening or something, learning from it and communicating again and trying again and keep going. And I feel a little bit but in this meeting I got to try and bring myself into a higher state.